Now it is finally time to examine in greater detail possibly one of the most important battles in the history of humanity. The fate of the world would be decided on that 28th of October AD 312 when the Emperor Constantine won over his rival Maxentius at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. How did Constantine win, and why was this such a momentous event for humanity? Well, friends of late Roman history, let us find out. We have already talked extensively about the Emperor Constantine, a man about whom I am very conflicted in this video here. Constantine had been proclaimed emperor in AD 306 in Britannia near the city of York. In a series of events that I also discussed in said video, the situation had developed such that he found himself entrenched in a civil war with the Emperor Maxentius, who was residing since 306 in Rome. In the year 312 then, Constantine would decide to engage Maxentius in Italy and march towards Rome with an army 40,000 men strong. Maxentius meanwhile commanded an army that is thought to have been twice as large. Before Constantine, already two emperors, Severus and Galerius, had tried to depose him and marched on Rome with large armies, but both times Maxentius had prevailed because the armies would switch sides to Maxentius. So Maxentius was confident that he could win against Constantine, who had the superior battle experience. Constantine had fought against the Picts in Britannia and against the Franks in Germania and was both times quite successful, so Maxentius knew that Constantine was not someone to be underestimated. Constantine was advancing south through Italy, and it was then on October 27th, one day before the two emperors would engage, that Constantine had a famous vision. According to the Christian chronicler Eusebius, Constantine saw something in the sky which appeared like a cross and the words "In hoc signo vinces," "In this sign you shall conquer." He was unsure what it meant, but then the following night he had a dream in which Christ himself told him that he should use this sign against his enemies. The next morning then Constantine advised his soldiers to paint the Chi Rho sign onto their shields. The Chi Rho comes from the first two signs of the name Christ, written in Greek. And please like this video and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire, because I want this to be the most detailed channel on YouTube about the fall of the Roman Empire. I will leave no detail out. And please consider supporting our work on Patreon or via YouTube membership, because the long-term sustainability of this channel really depends on your support. YouTube is not really generous to such a niche topic about the late Roman Empire, and as you can imagine, the ad revenue from the videos is really low. So in order to be long-term sustainable, I really need your support via Patreon or YouTube membership. I think Maiorianus would thank you for supporting a channel bearing his name. I certainly do. Gratias ago tibi, amici. Meanwhile, Maxentius was in Rome, but something happened which we don't exactly understand. Contrary to the first two times where emperors had marched against him, this time he decided not to stay in Rome protected by the giant walls of Aurelian, but to engage Constantine in open battle. Some sources say that Maxentius had consulted the Sibylline books, which were a collection of ancient verses and used as an oracle. They stated to Maxentius that on October 28th an enemy of Rome would perish. Thinking that Constantine was meant as the enemy of Rome, he was probably inclined to fight Constantine. Also, it must be noted that October 28th was the same day of the proclamation of Maxentius as emperor 6 years earlier. It is therefore thought that Maxentius was moved to engage Constantine in open battle which would prove the wrong decision, as Constantine was by that time, as we said, an experienced commander, whereas Maxentius lacked any military experience. Thus, on October 28th, both armies met at the Milvian Bridge. This was a stone bridge that carried the Via Flaminia across the Tiber River into Rome, but it is thought that Maxentius had destroyed the stone bridge in preparation for a siege. Instead, he had a wooden bridge constructed to get his army across the river. It is sometimes also thought that it could have been a pontoon bridge. Constantine with his army was on the opposing side, while Maxentius decided to cross this bridge and to meet Constantine on the other side. This can already be seen as a tactical mistake. Had he let Constantine advance over the bridge, his chances would have been a lot better. So Constantine waited on the other side until a part of Maxentius's army was assembled. Or it might also have been fully assembled, we don't exactly know. But in any case, Maxentius's army was assembled such as to be far too close to the river behind it. Constantine, seeing this mistake, launched his cavalry against Maxentius's cavalry, routing them, because he had the battle-experienced troops, the same who had fought against the barbarians in Britannia and in Germania. Maxentius's troops lost ground, and after Maxentius's cavalry had been routed, they were being pushed back towards the river. We should not forget that Maxentius had the larger army. Some sources say that he had possibly 80,000 soldiers, so even though the battle was not going in his favor, he still had more troops than Constantine. He thus decided to order a retreat in order to regroup at the other side of the bridge, but now Maxentius's own plan of cutting the stone bridge would be his undoing. The wooden or pontoon bridge was not very stable, and the masses of Maxentius's retreating soldiers made the bridge collapse. The remaining soldiers who didn't manage to retreat were now trapped and had to fight Constantine's overwhelming force. Many of the others drowned as they were pulled down by the heavy battle armor they wore. It is thought that this is also how Maxentius died. He was either thrown into the river by his horse, or he drowned while attempting to swim to the other side. Maxentius's remaining soldiers on the northern bank were either killed or taken captive, which also included his Praetorian Guard, the same that had proclaimed him emperor 6 years earlier. With Maxentius dead, the remaining soldiers either fled to Rome or quickly capitulated. We can thus see that no divine intervention was in play here, but a superior commander won against an inferior one. Maxentius was untrained, and he obviously made some critical tactical mistakes. Advancing over the bridge just to then order a retreat when things didn't go well was a really badly thought out plan, and shows that he was not an able military commander. I talked more about Maxentius and his building projects in Rome in this video here. Had Maxentius been a better commander, or had he decided to stay in Rome and sit out the siege, this might have gone entirely differently. The victory of Constantine would prove momentous for the history of the world, because after this battle, Constantine would turn more and more towards Christianity and would found a new capital in the east, the city of Constantinople, which would have gigantic consequences for the Roman Empire. This would greatly increase the power of the east, but diminish the power of the west, with great consequences some 150 years later. I talked about why the Eastern Roman Empire survived for longer than the West in this video here. Also, Constantine's victory would enable the rise of Christianity, which would spell doom for the old pagan traditions upon which Rome was founded. This would lead to great religious conflicts and further weaken the predominantly pagan western half of the empire. I talked about the fight of paganism against Christianity and its slow death in this video here. Without Constantine, it is unknown if Christianity would have become the dominant religion of the empire. It still might have, but the chances would have been much lower, and another cult such as Mithras or Sol Invictus might have become the dominant religion. Thus, we can really say that the fate of the world was decided on that October 28th of the year AD 312. And if you are interested to learn more about Constantine, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you are more interested in learning more about Maxentius, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of late Roman history, gratias amici imperii Romani, and bene vale.